Evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Dominici, and I am the Executive Director of the Rye Youth Council, and I'm very glad you could join me and our youth educator, Miss Jessica Lodato, and our wonderful youth and parent panelists tonight, and you'll meet them all in just a moment. For the parents in the audience and the kids, Rye Youth Council is a 50-year-old nonprofit organization located in Rye, New York. And our sole mission is to support the social and emotional health and mental well-being of children, teens, and young adults in our community. And we do this through programs and services, experiential learning, leadership opportunities, employment services, and lots of programs for kids grades K through 12 and their parents. Tonight, we have a transition to middle school program. You'll hear from a group of middle school experts, kids themselves who have lived it, and then you'll hear from their parents. So in a sense, this is the inside scoop to middle school. And throughout the program, please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, and we will make sure that we either address them as we go along if it seems appropriate, or at the very end, we will have some questions and answers. And I'm going to turn it over right now to Jessica Lodato, Miss Jess, and she will share more information with you. So thanks again for joining us. And we will be sharing a recording of this tomorrow or the day after when it's done. All right, kids, it's all yours. And Miss Jess, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Hi, everybody. It's really great to have you all with us tonight. Before we start our evening, I'd like to take a moment to thank everybody who's here tonight, whether you're from the Rye City School District, Resurrection, Rye Neck, Rye Brook, Rye Country Day, or any other school, welcome. We're so happy to have you joining us tonight. So we're going to get right into it because we only have an hour. What we're going to do is we are going to start, I'm going to chat with you for a few minutes, and then we're going to have our wonderful sixth grade volunteers here answer some questions that I'm going to ask them. And these questions have been created by all of the different questions I've heard from middle schoolers over the past 4 years. So hopefully we'll get your answers to some of these questions that you have. And at the very end, then we will do a Q&A, and you can put your own questions in the chat. Okay, so before we get started, I want to share a slide with you. I'm not going to bore you with slides tonight because I think we've all had enough of that recently. Let's see. Okay, so middle school. It's an exciting time, and there's a lot of change and a lot of things to look forward to. And I'm going to venture to say that as excited as you are about it, you probably have some questions and maybe a few concerns, and that's completely normal. I'm sure there have been a few adults.
Jess, excuse me, I can't see your slide if you're sharing it now.
Oh, I am. No? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Hold on a second. It's been a while since I've done this. Let's share my screen, which actually is a good minute because I need to talk to you anyway. Before I go back to that. So I'm sure there's been a few adults who have told you, like, don't worry about it. You know, everyone's feeling the same way. And the truth is, it doesn't feel that way, right? It feels like my concerns are my only concerns. And I'm going to tell you that not everybody feels the same way. But there's probably 15, 20, or 100 kids who are feeling something similar. And it's all part of the process. So let me share my screen now and show you what I was thinking. Okay. All right. How's that, Lisa? Can we see that? Can you guys see that? One of the panelists can tell me.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to need to fix that. So hold on a second. All right. Be amazed. You see it now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So a lot of the things that I've heard over the years that kids are worried about is, you know, what's the workload going to be like? What's the homework going to be like? Are we going to have lockers? There's all these new people that we're going to be meeting, time management. You know, how am I going to get to my classes in 4 minutes? Like, that seems like not a lot of time. What are my classes going to look like? And some people are very excited about all of those things. And some people are a little bit anxious, and that's all normal. One of the biggest things that we're going to learn in middle school is self-advocacy. Okay. So self-advocacy is when we're speaking up for ourselves. And the thing that we have to remember that the biggest thing in middle school isn't just math and language arts and science. It's also getting used to transitioning to a whole new way of being. So you're going to be changing classes and meeting new people. And it might seem overwhelming, but this is something I want to tell you. All of your sixth grade teachers and the guidance counselors in your school also know that this is part of what you're supposed to learn this coming year. You're supposed to learn how to make friendships, how to ask questions, how to speak up for yourself, okay, and how to navigate a new place. And they're very helpful and they're very forgiving, okay? Okay. So without further ado, let's take some time to talk to our middle schoolers who've been here. So tonight we have 4 Rye middle schoolers, okay, who are going to be willing to share their experience, their insights, and their wisdom. So from 6th grade, we have Miss Fiona Marino. In 7th grade, we have Miss Caitlin Murray and Master Philip Nemeth. We call you guys masters when you're boys, okay? And for 8th grade, we have Master Eddie Malloy. Before we start anything, I just want to take a minute and I want to thank you so much. And I want to acknowledge how brave you are for being a part of this, because this is not easy. But I think you're all going to do great. So are you ready to get started? Okay. Okay, so my first question for our panelists this evening is, there are many changes when we enter middle school. We're entering a new building, we're changing classes, different teachers, we're even getting up earlier. So before you entered school on that first day, what did you think it would be like and how did you feel? Who would like to try that one? Go ahead, Caitlin.
To be honest, I was really nervous.
Okay.
My mom can vouch for that as well. I was really nervous about a whole bunch of things. I was nervous about the amount, like how there were going to be so many new people from many different schools and I didn't know everyone. And I was nervous about not getting to class on time. That was a big thing. But I was also excited because with that comes with a lot more freedom and more teachers and periods. And that was really exciting, having a whole bunch of different classrooms. So it was a big mix of nervousness and excitement.
Okay, it's really soupy feelings, right?
Yeah.
I get that. So now looking back, what did you think about your first day? So, now you're in 7th grade. So think about it a second. Like if you look back now, what would you have told yourself then?
I think it was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. Firstly, the teachers were so understanding about getting to class late, especially because it was like the first week. And even now, like teachers are so understanding. And anyway, I barely ever got to class late. You have more than enough time. And the amount of people, I made friends really easily. And there's a lot more positives than negatives. And I think I overwhelmed myself with a lot more anxiety than there really is to worry about.
Okay. So maybe do a little bit of kind of, if you were to look back, just say, okay, like it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. How about everybody else? Thank you, Caitlin. How did you guys feel? What were your thoughts?
When I look back on it, I just noticed that I was very overwhelmed the first day on all the workload that was coming in and that we had to get on in time. And I realized that it really was no big deal because you kind of got the hang of it over the first 1 or 2 weeks. And over time, they kind of just, all the problems that you were thinking of before you got into middle school, they kind of just went away on themselves as you went along.
Did you feel like when you said it was like 1 or 2 weeks, did you just turn around one day and say, wait a minute, like I was so concerned, but here I am, I'm in a groove.
I couldn't even realize when I noticed it. Like it was all natural to me when it came. So you just get the hang of it as you go.
So that came pretty natural for you. Oh, very cool. Okay. How about Fiona or Eddie?
Just to add on, Philip and Caitlin, I was really nervous in the first upcoming weeks. I was nervous about my friends, my schoolwork, my teachers. But after a couple of weeks, it catches up to you and you'll be fine. And it's not really what it is. Like, you think it's really nerve-wracking. It is a transition, but it's not a massive transition. Like, I got over it pretty quickly. And the one thing that I wish I had done sooner that would have made me feel less nervous is to not be scared, to like ask questions with your teachers, get close, try and meet new friends, and just don't be scared.
Okay. Oh, I think we just lost Fiona. I'm sure she'll come back on. Lisa, will you keep an eye out for her?
I sure will. I think she was having some trouble with her muting, so I think
Yeah,
that's
it's
what
in that way. Okay, thanks. Okay, guys, so let's ask the next question. Another change that happens in middle school are all the new faces you're going to meet and all the different opportunities you have for those friendships. What were your thoughts about all the new people? I know you thought about it might be overwhelming meeting all new people, but what were your thoughts about actually possibly starting new friendships? And if you started them, how did you start them?
I started new friendships. Well, first of all, I think for everyone fits in differently, but friendships will come to you. So you just have to take your time. But one thing that I used that I think was really helpful is to utilize lunch as an opportunity to meet new people. Because what I did is I sat at different tables with new people every single day to try and meet a lot more people and to try and learn who should I be friends with, who shouldn't I be friends with, and that really helped. And then from then on, I filmed my friendships, and yeah.
So what did you say when you went to these different lunch tables? Like, how did you just sit down?
I would just each day, I would just kind of do it. I didn't really say anything. I would just sit there and try and start a conversation, maybe talk about school, and then from that'll go somewhere else.
Okay. Excuse me just a minute. Fiona's mom is asking me a question. Oh, okay. They're going to come on right now. So that's great. Okay. Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate that. How about Philip or Caitlin? What'd you do?
I think that the best thing for you to be when you get into middle school and you see new people from different schools, you just be open to everybody. You gotta see, you kind of know who's gonna be your friend when you meet them because it kind of clicks with you. But you just have to be open. Without being open to it, you won't ever meet new people, and you won't see who else you can be friends with. So.
Did you feel like the more relaxed you were, the more natural it kind of felt?
Yeah, it was a little bit like nerve-wracking as you met them because you really had no clue who they were and what they were like. So it was kind of for you to see who would, like, what they would be like, and it was just a little bit like scary sometimes, like going up to some random person saying oh hi, like creating a relationship off that. So yeah.
Now, did anybody that you went up to and said hi to, like, is a really good friend now, a couple years later?
I wouldn't say that I had really close friends now that I met last year, but some people from my core classes I become really good friends with, and like I've created a solid relationship with them. So yeah, it definitely
Oh,
helps.
that's nice.
Open.
One year we had a young lady who said that sometimes she would just ask somebody what the homework was, even though she knew what it was, just to start talking.
Yeah.
Right. You just find something, you find the smallest little thing, right?
That just goes on to further conversation, and then you get to know a little bit more about them, and that's.
Okay. Thank you. How about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, so I think I was quite nervous about the idea because like quite a few of my friends were on different teams and I was really nervous about making new friends. But as you said, like just asking simple questions about like schoolwork and stuff can lead to more conversation and then building friendships. And at the end of the day, like in 7th grade now, I reconnected with friends from 5th grade. And so even they don't have to go away. Like one of my best friends in 5th grade, I'm now best friends with in 7th. Yeah. And so it comes naturally making friends. Like it's people usually have a lot of anxiety about it. I did, but really it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think the best mindset for making friends is to be relaxed and to keep an open mind, because anyone can become your best friend. And the only reason that, or the only way that you'll be able to do it is by keeping relaxed. Don't get too stressed and have so much anxiety. You just got to keep relaxed.
You think maybe a deep breath might help?
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm really glad actually those points that you brought up, and Caitlin, I'm really happy with the point that you brought up, because here's the thing I want to tell you kids. Your friendships are going to change. They're going to come, they're going to go. And somebody who were friends in 5th grade, maybe when you get to the middle school, you might find you drift a little bit and you start to pick up different interests and meet different friends. And then you go to like 8th grade or high school and you're friends again. Caitlin is a perfect example, right? How she's really good friends with her 5th grade friend again. So I guess what I want you to think about is try to keep in mind that it's natural, branch out, and don't feel so bad if you guys kind of go in and out. Maybe try to see it as the adventure that it can be and try not to take it so personal. It's just part of the journey. Okay, so let's move on. One of the most important things to learn in 6th grade is how to advocate for yourself. Okay, it's to speak up, represent yourself. When during your middle school career did you have to advocate or speak up for yourself with either your teachers, your guidance counselors, your coach? How did it go? Go ahead.
I think I think things simple enough as just asking questions in class can be nerve-wracking. But it's so crucial to inquire about things because it makes so much of a difference and understand, not just being able to do concepts in school, but understanding them is so crucial in moving forward in your learning. So I think advocating for myself in the sense that just asking questions in class, nothing else really in particular, but primarily that, yeah.
Okay.
I was like a little different, and I wouldn't really speak up for myself, and I was kind of quiet, but I had to speak up for myself when I was most struggling, and I think that helped me, even though like struggling, that seems bad, but when I was struggling, I had to speak up for myself and I had to do it, and that gave me some like momentum, and that gave me some hope. And then from then on,
I pushed you to do it. Like you said, you had to, but what was the thing that got you to jump the hurdle? Do you remember?
Yeah, and that was me struggling. So I think if I were to redo it, I would try to advocate from the beginning, whether you have a problem or you don't, because I only did it when I had a problem, and it ended up helping. But if you did it without having a problem, it would have been better.
Okay, without being nervous, you mean?
Yeah.
It would have overall made things a little easier.
Yeah, definitely.
I get that. Thank you. Philip, go ahead.
So kind of my first step when I first got into middle school was to create a good bond with my teachers, to get to know them, so I wasn't really nervous when I had to talk to them or when I wanted to ask questions or when I needed help with stuff. And that kind of helped me because I had older siblings who already had those teachers, so they kind of already knew me as that their sibling, so I was already known, and I kind of already had a bond with them, so it was easy for me to speak up for myself.
Can you say that very last part about the bond again?
So I was saying how my first step was to bond with my teachers, just so that I knew I wouldn't be scared, like I wouldn't think to myself before I would ask them a question, so I wouldn't be scared to tell them anything.
And that's a wonderful technique, right? You stop and you say, like, what am I going to say, right? How am I going to say it? What's a good time? Are those things that you considered?
Yeah.
And that kind of eased your anxiety a little bit?
Yeah, it definitely helped me. And also just the bond with my teacher, knowing that they already know me, so.
Okay, that is a big deal for sure. Fiona, it's nice to have you back. There you go.
I'm so sorry. We do not know what happened. It just like the Zoom went away and we just like heard your voices, but I didn't have the Zoom. I couldn't see anybody. It was really good.
Oh my gosh, well, I'm so happy you're back now. Would you like to answer the question I just asked?
Sure. Can you repeat that, please?
Absolutely. When was a time that you had to speak up in middle school, and how did that go for you?
Well, I think it was in the beginning of the year, and I had a math test, and like I didn't really like the score I got, and it was like maybe the first like 4 weeks of school, and I was really upset about the test and everything, and I didn't know how to email my teacher either, and so I finally figured out how to email them, and I wrote them an email, and I was like, I don't understand why this happened. Can you like explain this to me? And then after like advocating for myself, they explained it to me. And not only like did, they fix my test, I also like understand it and like how to advocate for myself and how to do things and like how to write an email too.
That's great because, self-advocacy and speaking up and getting your needs met and asking those questions, that's a skill you're going to need forever.
Yeah.
When you're an adult, you're always going to need that skill. And that's the beautiful thing about sixth grade, right? You get to do that and you get to make mistakes because everybody knows that these are the things you're learning and they're super important. I'm going to ask you a quick question for all of you. You can just give me a thumbs up. Have you ever had someone ask a question and you were like, I was just wondering that? So could we safely say that if you have a question, you feel a little bit nervous about asking it, but if you asked it, there's probably 3 other kids in the room who have the same question?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you can find that courage and take that deep breath and think about what you want to say, you're actually helping out like 3 to 5 other kids in the class without even knowing it. So
Yep.
try to remember that, right? When you want to ask a question, like, hey, I'm actually helping out a few kids. All right, thank you. Okay. Looking back now on those first few weeks or so of sixth grade, what might you have done differently? I think, Eddie, you might have touched upon this already a little bit. What do you think? Was there
I
any?
can just add on to that.
Yeah.
Looking back on those first few weeks, I wish I had spoken to my teachers more. I feel like it didn't have to be about school. It didn't have to be about work. Just getting to know my teachers, and that opened up so many other things. Like maybe they had to give me some feedback for something, or they would like link me to other people who I could meet and potentially become friends with. But I just wished that I had spoken to my teachers because they would have helped me feel a lot more comfortable for the rest of the year.
Okay. Is a good place to make those connections to your teachers in X period?
Yeah, that's a really good place.
Okay, so if you're in the Rye City School District, now you might be in another district, and I'm sure there's another way to do it there. X period is a free period where kids can go and get extra help every day. It's kind of mandatory here, but in other schools, there could be the morning before school starts. It might be a teacher's available at lunch and you didn't realize it. Okay, so the idea is to go to your guidance counselor if you're not sure and ask your guidance counselors, like, when can I kind of get to meet my teachers better? And they'll tell you how to go and do that.
Or even if your school doesn't have any extra time like that, just stopping in or staying a couple minutes after class would just be perfect.
Okay. Okay. So, was there any advice that any of you would like to give the sixth graders coming in? Go ahead, Caitlin.
I think there are 2 main things. One is something you're going to hear from so many people, but it is so crucial. It's organization, which people hear so much, but really it helps so much because you can feel really overwhelmed because with the freedom, there is a bit more work. But just writing down your homework or listing the things you've got to do. Something as simple as that can be so helpful in putting down your thoughts and getting together what you need to do and like a checklist or something. That really works for me. But it's really important in getting your work done. And the second thing would be focusing more on the learning aspects of things, making sure you're really absorbing the knowledge. And obviously grades are important, but don't put that much pressure on yourself, because at the end, it's a lot more important that you understand the concepts than if you get a 90 or an 80 or 70. Just being able to understand what you're learning and engaging is a lot more important than a number in the end. So
And I love that you say that, because the truth is, kids, grades are snapshots telling you whether or not you need to put a little extra time in, or maybe you didn't understand something and you need to advocate and get some clarification, right? Have someone clear something up. But it's just letting you know what you need to work on. So try not to get too hung up on it. I love that, Caitlin. Thank you.
of course.
Fiona, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say what Caitlin was saying. Time management and everything, and being organized is a really big part of sixth grade, because I mean there is gonna be a little bit more work in sixth grade and a few more tests, and a few things you are gonna have to study for, which is okay. But you just want to make sure you're understanding everything and that you put in the time to do the things while you also have time to do other things. You can also like go with your friends and stuff and have fun.
And I know there's people in everybody's school or your parents that can actually help you if you just speak up and let them know. Yeah, I think. Okay, boys, do either of you want to answer that question?
Yeah. So coming into middle school, I didn't really expect for me to branch out from my friends a little bit and try and meet new friends. But a little bit through sixth grade, I kind of drifted away a little bit just to see how it was with like other friends and see how that was. And then now I'm back with that same friend group now in seventh grade. So yeah, it was good to be open to see who you want to be friends with.
Okay, thank you. Eddie, how about you? Any advice for these guys?
Like I've been saying, just to have an open mind and not be nervous. It seems so small, and like Caitlin was saying, it's something that everyone's going to be repeating. It is so important, because without those two strategies, you won't do good in school, you won't make friends, and you won't have a good time in middle school.
Okay, here's my last question for you. Not everybody has to answer, only answer if you want to. If you could go in a time machine and go back in time and talk to your parents, what advice would you ask them? Or what, I shouldn't say that. What advice would you give them on parenting you and helping you out when you went into sixth grade? Go ahead, Fiona.
Well, when like I guess your child enters middle school, it's like a whole different school, and it can be kind of like overwhelming and everything, for like the kid to like adjust to everything. And so I feel like the parents should be very patient with their children and make sure like they're there for them along the way and everything. And also just help them like the first few like days of school and making sure like everything's going all right, not just with their learning experiences, but like socially and everything.
Okay, very cool. Thank you. Okay, Caitlin, go ahead. I get you
I
next.
think this is not so much advice for my parents, because they really did hone into this and they really did do this, but more advice for other parents. Like, middle school is a whole new experience, and that does come with more freedom. So I think do be understanding of the fact that your kids are going to want to be more independent, usually, and do give them the opportunity to hone into this independence and be a little more understanding of the fact that they might want to do a bit more stuff by themselves and maybe focus on more of their schoolwork by themselves and try and take things into their own hands. And obviously it's good to be there, but also just give them a little bit of leeway with that. And my parents were really, really good with that. And I appreciate that so much, because it has really shaped me into an independent person. And so, yeah, that's probably my advice.
Okay, thank you. Philip, go ahead. Oh, I can't hear you, hon.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now I can. Go ahead.
I totally agree with Caitlin. The main thing moving into middle school is the sense of independence you get, going to new classes on time, meeting new teachers, meeting new friends. And that's something that your parents have to support you along the way with, like doing new work by yourself. And they just have to experiment on how they see you being independent. So they just have to let you do your own thing and figure out your own challenges and see how they can do by themselves.
It's hard to let you guys go,
Yeah.
but we get it. Thank you. Eddie, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just something a little different.
Go ahead.
I wish my parents in the past would keep me more focused. I think that would have really helped me because going into 6th grade, I was really nervous but I didn't really know what to expect. So if my parents just keep me a little more focused, so I wouldn't have to struggle and worry so much, and that would have really helped. And one thing that they could do by keeping me more focused is like checking in with me a little more often, and having my parents almost like having them be like my coach, like coaching me more often.
Okay, I like that. So I think what I'm hearing between Caitlin and Eddie and everybody, that it's kind of, we have to find our own way with it, right? And that actually brings me to a really good point. But before we do that, Lisa, is there any questions in the chat on anything we covered?
Yes, we have a couple questions for the kids. The first question, and they both have to do with friendship. So the first question is, if you branch out with new friends, will your old friends think you're leaving them?
Go ahead, Fiona.
I don't really think so, because in elementary school, you probably have like a few friends that you feel really comfortable with, and that's great. And then when you go to middle school, you might make a few new friends, but your friends from elementary school are probably going to make a few new friends too. And I think that you'll still stay friends with like your friends from like elementary school. And I think that everybody kind of comes together and like meets everybody and has a good time together. So I don't really think anybody gets too left out sometimes by that.
Thank you, Fiona. Was there another question in there?
Yes, here's another question. Are there any other times that are good to branch out with the other kids than in the cafeteria?
I've noticed personally, like going through the hallways and seeing your friends, you go hi, and then you ask them a couple questions like, oh, what do you have for homework? What is this? What's that? And just talking to them a little bit kind of keeps your friendship going together. Even though you might not be on the same team or in the same class, you guys are still going to be together and seeing each other.
So
And I think, thank you. And I think one of you talked about how you made new friends by sitting with different people in the cafeteria. So can you think of other instances in the school where you might be able to meet new friends other
Yeah,
than the cafeteria?
just like in between, in the halls in between classes was a great time. After school clubs, I know my school has after school clubs. That was a great time to meet people because you can play sports and play games with people. If you just go to school a little early, you'll see other kids and you can start conversations that way. But those are like my 3 or 4 main ways to make friends.
Probably too, you could like join the play or be in the band or something, right?
Yeah, that's another
Common
good.
interest. Very
I think-
cool.
That's it with questions so far, Jess.
Okay. All right, guys. So thank you so much. You can do your thing or you can hang around. I'm going to ask you to sit with your parents. And parents, while you guys are taking the seats of your children, I'm going to just share a few slides with the rest of our parents. Okay? Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Okay, so parents, just some things while we're waiting for the switch to be made that I would love to share with you. Just a few ideas. Okay, so, middle school is a great deal about middle school is about self-advocacy as a life skill. And you heard us talking about it with the kids. 6th grade and middle school is the greatest place to practice that because everybody's ready for it. All the adults are. Guidance counselors and teachers, they see self-advocacy as one of the most important things you can learn in middle school. And as parents, we now have to guide our children to develop this skill. So our parenting kind of shifts a little bit, and we go from speaking up for them to coaching them on how to speak up for themselves. I don't know if you heard Fiona say how she had to figure out how to send an email and how to craft an email. And that's actually a really great skill for them. Friendships, as parents, it could be so hard watching friendships come and go because we know the kids will be fine, but we know sometimes it could be very nerve-wracking. And like we were talking about earlier, you'll have a friend in 5th grade and maybe you might drift in 6th or 7th and come back to each other in 8th grade. It's just the journey of the way it is. And sometimes our kids have friends that are ready to take that, that next step where they're ready to like be a little bit more mature or do something a little different or branch out. And our kid may not be there. And just like our kid can't go with the other friend, that friend also just can't stay behind. So it's an interesting time for them. And if we can keep talking with our kids, we can kind of help them through it. So there can be a really great sense of loss in kids' friendships and a certain amount of grief. But the beautiful thing about the grief is that grief is a sign of gratitude. So in our children, if we can help them navigate and reflect upon all of the good things that came out of those friendships with a sense of gratitude, then that loss doesn't become just a loss. It becomes kind of bittersweet. And we know that we can always remind them, next year's another year. And then kids can also start to look for identity through their friends and wanting to spend more time on their own. That was something that Miss Caitlin had talked about. So some of the things we can think about when we're parenting our middle schooler, when it comes to the friendships changing and shifting, really help them create values. What does a friend do and what does a friend not do? Give them a barometer to kind of test out the different relationships they have. What do you expect from a friend? What's a boundary look like? If your child's coming to you with a problem, instead of trying to fix it like we all want to, just pause for a second and, what ears do you want me to use? Do you need me to give you advice? Do you want to vent? Do you want perspective? Like, I don't want to give you more than you need. Which ears do you need me to listen to you with? Or do I need to pick up the phone? How upset are you? So we're encouraging self-advocacy, but we're letting them know that at the base of everything, we are there for them. And something that's really important, I think is really hard when our kids go to middle school, is being informed about the school, but taking a pause when we hear the stories that come home. So your guidance counselors are so well equipped in their schools. They know their teachers. They really do know your kid. They've seen so much about friendships and relationships and schoolwork. And sometimes they know how to stretch your child a bit, where they may see your child struggling, but they know how to kind of, work it so your child has a good experience and learns from what they're going through. There's a lot to gain from a little discomfort. And sometimes when we're uncomfortable, that's where we grow the most. So we want to kind of keep that in mind. And before we pick up the phone to fix a problem with a guidance counselor, call and say, hey, are you aware of this? And what are you guys doing? How can I help? How can we support each other? So just a few little things to think about as your kid is entering, or your child, I like to say kid, but as your child is entering 6th grade. Okay. So I know I kind of busted through that a little bit, but I also want to be very cognizant of our time, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions. So now we have with us our parent panelists. We have Fiona's mom, Julie. We have Caitlin's mom, Kim. Philip's mom, Petra. And who I forgot. And sorry, did I call Jennifer? Eddie's mom. I'm reading them in a list, but I'm looking at the screen. You know how that goes. I think we're all Zoom fatigued. Are you guys ready for some questions?
Oh.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay. So what advice? So I'm trying to think here. What I want to ask you first, just thinking about time. What advice would you give parents on supporting their child in those first few weeks or months of middle school? And anybody here can, answer at will. It's fine. Or I'll call on you if that makes it easier.
So I think, as you could probably hear from what Caitlin said, she was really independent. And she says that she was nervous, but she didn't really vocalize any nervousness until the day before she went to middle school. So the whole of summer, she was really excited and really seemed really unaffected by the change. And literally the day before, it felt like it all came crashing down. She was worried about if she was going to find her classes, what was she going to do, where were her friends? And I feel like that took me by surprise, but she got over it really quickly. But it was often the small things that really made a difference. I think the fact that finding the class and knowing where your friends are and who your friends are going to be, those were, it was some really small things that we could just support her on, and just keeping a positive attitude from our perspective and helping her to understand that it was all going to be okay, and that she had this really supportive community within the school to help her through this. And just reiterating that all the time, because the school, well, Rye Middle School was really amazing in terms of making sure that that transition was really easy, relatively easy for the kids.
Okay,
Maybe to
thanks.
build on this, that the advice really would be, even if your child doesn't show any signs of like worry or distress, that it is such a big switch that you can assume internally there's a lot of stuff going on that we might not know. And that might just be that first step for us parents to realize that, wow, from now on we just don't see as much anymore, right? I mean, in elementary school we were able to go in and out, we could spend hours there, we knew everything what was school related, friends related. And now we have to kind of switch into a different role where we ask questions, where we don't lead on with like preconceived notions or ideas, but where we find more moments where actually we have a relaxed time with our kids, and they can just spill, right? They can just like share with us a little bit more of their world, and we just need to stay open-minded.
Thank you.
I was going to say that one of the things that I realized that I had to go back to probably in the beginning of every school year while the kids have been in middle school is because there's been so much freedom, and with the technology and all this stuff, and they're, you know, going into town or wanting to do stuff, I still have to remember that they're 11 or 12 and that they still need basic structure. And I have to remind myself of that kind of at the beginning of each year. Still have to remind them or set the bedtimes, you know, and they come home and they say, oh, so-and-so staying up until 11. You know, I have to make sure they're still getting enough sleep, and getting enough sleep and eating well, like that really helps with the anxiety, and making sure they still have that basic structure that maybe they had as like a first grader, you know, different times, but still continuing to do that, because I think they get independent and kind of, at least I do, kind of forget that I'm supposed to still sometimes be setting that structure, and that definitely helps going and starting a new school year.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? Because there's this continuum where we kind of as parents have to end a bit so that they can begin. And they love their independence, but they still thrive on structure. Okay. They're not so loosey-goosey. I mean, 911, 9 to 11 hours of sleep at night. When we're not eating right, we're not sleeping right? That's a vulnerability factor, right? It makes everything a little bit more dramatic and a little more difficult. And it is so easy as a parent to forget that. So I love that you brought that up. Thank you. Jennifer,
yeah, the only other thing I would add too is the first few weeks of school, you know, going from elementary school where they only have one teacher, and then going to a whole schedule of 8 or 9, 10 different teachers. I think helping to navigate that part in the beginning, I think Eddie touched upon trying to get to know the teacher. I think that's very helpful. Again, you already spoke about the X period, but checking in with your child after the first week and looking at their schedule and asking them, so what conversation did you have with this teacher? How did you introduce yourself to that teacher? Because on top of trying to make new friends and all of that, they have to learn these teachers, and they're really only with, I think we think that when they're in the building, they're talking to their friends and seeing their friends and doing all different things, but they're really not talking to their friends as much as they're trying to be with that one teacher for 50 minutes and then move to the next one and the next one. And that takes a lot to learn a teacher and learn a person. So I think that's really big in the first good month of school, because your child can also just sit back and wait till the teacher calls on them. But I think if they can start a relationship and if they can remember when they left elementary, how much they loved their teacher from all the time that they spent with them.
I like that. Yeah, I think too, you have to remember to have those conversations. And I don't know if everybody gets to do family dinner at night, but those first couple of weeks, if you can find a little sacred space, whether it's just when they get home or, hey, take a half hour, but then come down, tell me about your day. Who are your teachers? Who are you talking to? And eventually you're going to let go of that a bit, right?
Yes, absolutely.
A month or so, kind of like Julie was saying or whatever, just try to remember like, okay, like this is, because it's hard. Guys, this is hard for you too. This letting go and this finding how much to give and how much to keep. And just remember that it's a transition for everyone. And I think if you keep that in mind, I think that you're in great shape, It's funny you say that because there's a lot of new relationships and friendships too, right? Not just like teachers, but guidance counselors and the principal and all these kids. And this was something that I found interesting as a parent. So like all of a sudden you start hearing names of friends that you never heard before. And these kids come to your home and your child wants to go to theirs and you don't really know the parents yet. Now Rye's a little bit smaller, but I think, we went from like however many kids in a grade to all these kids together. And I remember like I could have a kid sitting having dinner with us 1 minute and the next minute they're out the door because their parent was in the driveway and texted them to come out. And I've never met this person. Like what has your experience been like with your kids finding these new friendships? Like how does that feel?
Well, I can say, I personally, I think when, meeting as Eddie's meeting new people, something like that, I feel like I'm trying to introduce myself too. There's a saying, you can't always be your friends, your child's friends, best friends with the parents. But I think it's important to show your kids also like, how do you want them to communicate and how do you want them to act? So I think I personally, now have like a big group text of Eddie's friends' moms. And I think all of our communities, I know we're in all different towns here, but I think we all want what's best for our children and try to meet new people that way too. And I think when schools open up and back to school night and so on is such a great thing when you're hearing different names and you're like, oh, I've heard that name. I'd love to meet that parent. So I think, trying for us to make new relationships too.
Petra, I think you have something to add on to that.
And I think that part becomes a little bit harder for us, right? Moving from elementary to middle school, because we're just not picking up at the playground anymore. So I actually have found that the car can become your best new friend. Because the moment you have your child and a bunch of new friends in the car, it's just like you're in this enclosure and you're part of the conversation if you want it or not, or at least passively, just like even overhearing the kids, what they're talking about, what's important to them, and maybe really better to stay out of it. But you do develop, you just have to keep an open mind. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And also be creative, like, how can you create these new relationships, right? And like you said, Jennifer, we're not trying to be best friends with the parents of the new friends, but it does help to have a connection. So like doing that group text that you mentioned, or maybe as you drop a friend repeatedly at the house to just wave at the parent, or like when they drop your child, I was like, hey, do you want to just come up for a second? We haven't really met each other. Or after the back to school night, I remember it wasn't 6th grade, it was 7th grade, but when the new group was established, I just sent out a text message to everybody and said, hey, would you like to catch a drink after back to school night? Everybody showed up. And it goes to show that we all feel the same, right? And we seize these opportunities.
The question, how many people would get that text from Petra and be like, oh, that was so nice that somebody did that?
Well, exactly.
Right?
I felt a little
so be that person. Someone's going to be relieved, You're going to be helping people out. It's like the kids speaking up with the questions. We have to do the same
You said
thing.
that so well, Jessica, earlier. Yeah.
Kim, Julie, either of you have anything to say of that?
I would go on to what Jennifer was saying. I try to push my wave, like Petra was saying, wave from the car. I know it's so easy because they're older to just drop them off and run. Sometimes I would like to do that as well, but just push yourself to, you have to know who you're talking to. So yeah, second everything I said.
Yeah.
I would
Just
love
a
to
thumbs
talk
up.
to another parent. Right?
Here's like thumbs up. That's awesome. Okay, it is 7:54. So before I ask my final question, we have a few things. One, there are some questions in the chat. I can see like the numbers rising. If you're comfortable and able to stay an extra 5 or 10 minutes, that would be great. If not, just give me a chance to thank you before you go. And also for everybody watching, before we end, I'm going to put a QR code up. And I'd love you to just take your camera, hit that QR code, and give us some feedback to let us know what we can or cannot do to make this program even better. This is our first year doing it virtual, so it would be great to hear what you have to say. Okay, so last question for y'all. I sound like I'm from the South. What was one thing you wish someone would have told you as a parent for your child entering into middle school? Is there any one thing you kind of wish someone would have told you that we haven't mentioned? We might have mentioned everything. So.
I haven't brought it up as much. Someone said it, and I had heard this, but maybe it wasn't emphasized as much. The middle school is fantastic. The teachers from Rye Middle School, I know everyone is coming from different places, but the teachers really enable this independence, and they're really fostering the kids' advocacy for themselves. The principal, he was born to work with middle school students, Mr. DiGiovanni. I mean, he gets them there. The teachers and administration are so respectful towards the kids and really treat them age appropriately. And, people mention it to me, but I've been blown away every year that we've been at the middle school.
That's great. And if you're not in the Rye City School District, get to know your principal, that's right, and how they do that. Thank you. You guys all froze for a moment, so whoever didn't go, please feel free to take the floor.
I think for me, I have 2 daughters, and I think this time in their life is, in this age, they're going through so much change and so much seeking of identity. And I feel like middle school really is where obviously so much of this happens. So just be open to the change. And even if it's things that are driving you mad, which it will be at times, I think just kind of hold thumbs and think, well, it'll probably change again really soon. And that's our experience, is really just that seeking of identity, changing so much. So they've got so much going on at school, but there's so much going on in themselves as well. And I think it's really just, as I think Petra said, just keeping an open mind always and just supporting them, even though it can be quite a tough time for both of you at this stage.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add is we as parents have a lot of tools the schools give us from a Power School standpoint. And I know all of the schools do, with your child's schedule and things like that. And I think staying on top of that the first month is very important, because this is all new for them, and that you can guide them a little bit at home to say, okay, what's tomorrow going to look like? I think the tools that we get are just very helpful as parents.
Thank you.
And to look at these next 3 years as really like an exciting time, an adventure, like a learning, and it's almost, I don't want to downplay the academics. Obviously, it's very important to develop great fundamentals in all of these disciplines, but it's almost it's as important, and maybe even a little bit more important, to really develop a love for learning and how we learn. not just what we learn, because what we learn, that gets almost like it gets a makeover in high school, right? They go over the same stretch of social history. Again, it's just deeper and more complex, but it's how we learn. And it's important for us parents to let our kids slip every once in a while and not get bent out of shape when an assignment is late, and maybe when the second assignment is late. And it's more to think about, how can I, like you said earlier, coach them through maybe issues of timeliness or executive function or whatever, and just keep that open mind. It's not about checking off each and every box, and it's more important that they have a chance to develop as characters and as responsible citizens.
Because the truth is, just to add on to that myself, even as a parent, you know, when we build a strong or a solid social and emotional level, right? And we stop looking at grades as the end all. We see them, as we spoke to the kids earlier, they're snapshots of what you might need to improve or do. It helps them grow, and they get more solid for when they go to high school, when they go out into the world, right? We're building a scaffolding right now. Right. And I think we have to remember that it is a scaffolding, and that sometimes even as adults, right, our biggest growth comes from our biggest mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay, you know?
The grades don't matter. I mean, they do not get reported through into high school, except if you take in an 8th grade, I think it's earth science, right? For those elected.
But you take that as it comes too, right?
Exactly.
Because by the time you get to 7th or you get to 8th grade, you're all ready for that next step. Each grade is going to build you for the next one. So I guess the idea too is to try not to, we tell the kids, try not to get ahead of yourself. Don't be so worried about that first day. I think as parents, we need to do that with each grade, right? We have to stop saying, okay, I'm in 6th. Like I think ahead a little bit, but I can't get too caught up there. I got to build this. I have to build the foundation of bricks instead of sticks. And the rest of the house will take care of itself, you know? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much. If you just wait 1 second, I'm going to send you my QR code. Then I'm going to thank you all again. We have actually one question in the chat. The other one were all the kids that we already asked. So can you hang out for just 1 second? Mm-hmm. Okay. Give me 1 minute, because this whole sharing the screen thing, it's different on every platform that I use. Okay. All right. So if you could just take a minute to take a snapshot of this QR code. I'll give you about 20 seconds, counting down from now. All right, maybe 15 seconds. If anyone didn't get that, you could just let me know in the chat. Also, I just want everyone to know that you are more than welcome to reach out to me at the Rye Youth Council. I am going to put my email in the chat, so if you have any questions that come up after this night and you want to just talk about them with me, please feel free to reach out. We'll make a time. Nothing makes me happier than talking about all of these things. Okay, so while I'm putting my email in the chat, our question was, if your kid and his or her friends are getting bullied, what is the best approach, or what's the approach you've taken so far? And your kids, maybe they haven't been bullied, I don't know.
One of my kids was teased in class, and she went to the teacher, and she didn't think the teacher responded. I think it was a substitute that day. Didn't think the substitute handled it well, and unbelievably, she went to the principal on her own, and then her and her friends kind of took care of it. They didn't like that this was happening, and it was happening kind of a lot in this. I guess the teacher had been out and the sub was there, and the principal then contacted myself and my husband, and they had a meeting with the kids' parents. But there was I felt like the school really took my daughter's complaints or situation very seriously, and she felt very heard. She also then followed up with the teacher. Yeah. And so I like that she developed, continued to develop her advocacy for herself. And I also felt like the school was really reaching out to us. They weren't just like, well, we're going to handle it with the kids. They really took our feelings seriously as well. I was impressed. And it was, wasn't the greatest moment in her middle school time, but it ended up okay.
That's actually really great to hear. Sometimes I think because we don't have the same, the same presence in the school, right? That we had before, like Petra was saying on the schoolyard, maybe you were in the PTO where you were like, always helping out somewhere. If you were able to do that, if you're working full time, I'm sure there's some other way that you were really involved, right? And now all of a sudden it's like there's all these teachers. I to this day ask my kids, like, which teacher is that again? So it's hard to find out, you finally find out at home and you're like, where do I go first?
Yeah.
So I think it's fantastic that worked out so well for everyone. Anybody else want to take a crack at that, or?
I've heard about bullying secondhand, and I've heard it mostly from my daughter, Philip's older sister. And when she brought it up, I could see how upset she got and furious. And I was like, "What did you do when that happened?" She's like, "Well, I told them that is not okay." Okay, good. And I think we have to realize that when it comes to bullying, we think of it as a one-to-one thing, but there are so many people passively witnessing this, and there's so much I think we can do to just encourage the kids to, like, when you see something, say something. It's not okay, and making it really a thing for everybody, not just for the unfortunate one.
Maybe one of the other Zooms we can do in the future, because we're going to check in with the kids in September. So we're going to, kind of circle back to the kids who are here tonight. Well, the kids who are, who are here watching. Okay. But maybe something that wouldn't be a bad idea would be to explore doing something like this, or in person, hopefully. And going back to bullying, we talk about it in the Rice City School District. We talk about it in the 3rd and 4th grade. So, it's about 3-4 full day, full period classes where we devote to talking about bullying. So maybe that's something we can think about for the fall, which would be really nice. Okay, so thank you so much to all of you. We're so grateful that you took the time. And I know there's a lot of parents out there, if you can look in the chat, that are thanking you for taking the time. And hopefully we'll see you around soon. And please, if you guys have any questions yourselves, just reach out to me, okay? Okay, thanks for being with us, everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.